But he's done this. That's not all they've done. In the book of Acts, chapter 12, this is very disappointing for those of you who love the King James Version. I know some people will have their own excuse as to why this lie appears in the King James Version. But in Acts chapter 12, start with verse 3 and read through verse 4. It says, "And because he saw it pleased the Jews, or the Yahudim, he proceeded further to take Peter, who was called Kepha also. Then were the days of unleavened bread. And when he had apprehended him, he put him in prison and delivered him to 4 quaternions of soldiers to keep him, intending after Easter to bring him forth to the people." In 29 different places in the New Testament, we find the word Paschal in Greek. And in 28 of those places, it's called Passover, translated accurately, because Paschal is not even a Greek word, but is a word that had to be adapted to describe the feast of Passover. In one of those places, it is an outright lie, and this is it. The King James Version, it says Easter. Notice it's capitalized. But everywhere you see Passover, unleavened bread, it's lowercase. All the festivals of Yahuwah in the King James are lowercase, but when the lie comes, it's uppercase. They want you to see the great big lie of Easter. You can use a Strong's Concordance to see this, my friends. There's no excuse. It's a lie. Look in the New King James Version, for instance. In the King James, it says Easter, but the New King James, they fixed the problem. They put Passover. And in all other translations, they do this too. Most English translations are horrible, my friends. You can get a lot of truth in them, and you can begin a lifelong journey to know Yahuwah in them. But you really need to dig deeper than what they've given you in a translation, because there are lies in the translation, and that is one great big lie. So Easter's been added, and we know that they created the Gregorian calendar to set a date for Easter, and we know that they instituted Sunday worship and all these other things, and we don't see anything about Sunday worship in the Old Testament, but we see this first day of the week in the translations of the English New Testament. Let me let you in on a little secret. The word first day of the week, the words first day of the week, in Greek, there's no equivalent to the first day of the week which appears in the Greek text of the New Testament. No, none of them. None of them. None of them. Matthew 28 verse 1 is a good example. We're going to start here. We're going to read what it says and take it for what it says. Because Christians they'll say, oh, well, our Savior rose Sunday morning. So let's see what the scriptures say. Matthew 28 verse 1. In the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. Now right here, we see that they came to the sepulchre as it was dawning toward the first day of the week. We know in the very next verse, when they get there, he's gone. So right there we see that he didn't rise on the first day of the week. But let's take this a step further. Guess what? That word first day of the week there, where it says it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, it's a lie. And I call it a lie because it's not truth. Some people think a lie has to be something that's always intentional. Well, intentional or unintentional, my friends, this is not truth. What appears in the Greek is the word Sabbaton, miaton Sabbaton, which would literally say, in the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward another Sabbath, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. And the way this works is, there's not just the 7-day Sabbath. There's not just the 7th cycle of Yahuwah's Sabbath, but there are festivals which are recorded throughout the Torah, and upon some of these days, some of these festivals have Shabbats also. So this is how it works. It was leaving one Shabbat and coming into one of the festival Shabbats, okay? And this is how we see that Yahushua rose from the grave on a Sabbath. Okay, in Mark 16 verse 2, the only places in Mark where the word Sabbaton, which is also not a Greek word, but is a word that was adopted to describe a day that was kept by the Hebrew people, is it appears as Sabbath everywhere except in Mark 16:2 and Mark 16:9. We see in Mark 16:2, and very early in the morning, the first day of the week, they came into the sepulchre at the rising of the sun. And we know he was already gone. So that, even if it says what it says right here, we see that they came there at the rising of the sun, he's already gone. So he didn't rise. Even if it said that they came on the first day of the week, he didn't rise in the morning. He's already gone. But it doesn't say that. It says very early in the morning upon one of the Sabbaths. It says Sabbaton. Do a search and check out the Strong's Concordance. I'm going to include some of these links, and I'm going to also include some of the actual pictures of the Greek text so you can see that indeed it says Sabbaton. In Mark 16 verse 9, now when Yahushua was risen early the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he cast out 7 devils. Again, it says Sabbaton. And Luke 24, now upon the first day of the week, very early in the morning, they came into the sepulchre, bringing the spices which they had prepared, and certain others with them. And they found the stone rolled away from the sepulchre. Again, it does not say first day of the week in the Greek. It says Sabbaton, upon the Sabbath. In John 20 verse 1, the first day of the week cometh Mary Magdalene early, when it was yet dark. Okay, so if it says, this is one more piece of the puzzle. If it said first day of the week, and we see that they came at the dawning of the next day, and here in John 20 verse 1, we clearly see that it's still dark, then even if it did say first day of the week here, it does not justify Sunday worship, because we see clearly Yahushua is risen before the sun even rises. So that whole sunrise Sunday, Easter Sunday thing, it's a great big lie. But what it actually says again is, on one of the Sabbaths of the week came Mary Magdalene early, when it was yet dark, into the sepulchre, and seeth the stone taken away from the sepulchre. The word there is Sabbaton again, not first day of the week. John 20 verse 19, when the same day at evening, being the first day of the week, when the doors were shut, where the disciples were assembled for fear of the Yahudim, came Yahushua and stood in their midst, and saith unto them, Shalom, which means peace be unto you. Again, Yahushua did not appear to them on the first day of the week. It was on a Sabbaton. Look it up in the Strong's Concordance. I've got the links before you. There is no excuse. Type them in and see that the word Sabbaton appears here, my friends. Now this is one that is the silliest argument of all, but it's one that I run into all the time. It's Acts 20 verse 7. And it says, and upon the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread, Paul preached unto them, ready to depart on the morrow, and continued his speech until midnight. And people are like, oh, wait a minute. See, they broke bread on the first day of the week. Well, before I realized that it didn't say first day of the week here either, I didn't see this as an excuse. It's not an excuse for Sunday worship, even if they did break bread on the first day of the week. But hey, guess what? To our surprise, in the Greek it says Sabbaton once again. So yet again, there is an outright lie. They didn't meet and break bread on the first day of the week. It was upon a Sabbath day. And friends, you have no excuse now. The materials are before you. And right before you now, what I'm going to put is every single one of these instances so that you can check out the Greek. Okay, now that you've had a chance to look at it for yourself, we see that Yahushua's ministry revolves around the Shabbat day. I mean, he does a lot of his teaching on the Shabbat day. For example, here's a couple examples. Mark 1:21. They went to Capernaum, and straightway on the Sabbath day he entered into the synagogue and taught. Luke 4:16. And he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and as his custom was, he went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up for a read. Luke 4:31. And came down to Capernaum, a city of Galilee, and taught them on the Sabbath days. Luke 13:10. And he was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath. And he did most of his miracles on the Sabbath.